Today we have a very special person, Sam Bhattacharya, lives in Houston, Texas. I hope I pronounced that right. Uh, 2 weeks back, I was searching for a tool that can convert Zoom recordings into shorts because I'm quite lazy to do that and I didn't want to do it. And then a blog post that popped up was written by Sam, and I actually reached out to him. Hey, I mean, does it convert into shorts? Why are you doing it, etc. And I would like to talk to you. And he responded immediately, and from his response, I figured he had put in a lot of hard work to get this going. So today we're going to talk to Sam and understand why he's doing Katana and more about. Going to try and know who the Sam as a person is because he sent me some very interesting notes about him. It's almost, I think, it can be made into autobiography or a movie. But here we go. We get started. Sam, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, we're excited too. So, quickly, Sam, who are you? Introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, hi everyone. My name is Sam. I Right now I'm the CEO of a company called Katana. It's a tool I'm building that will automatically edit podcasts, and it's specifically good for editing Zoom recordings into video podcasts. I live in Houston, Texas. This is my second company. I have a very technical background working in AI and video, and I have a Mexican wife, and I have a 5-year-old son, and I speak Mandarin. I don't know. There's like all of the kind of personal, professional stuff, but just high level, that's me.
Yeah, that's cool enough. I think, Sam, you had one of the most colorful journeys of life that that anyone would have had. But as from the notes that you sent me, that's what I could infer. And I was wondering, you as a person have gone through lots of ups and downs. I can see that very clearly, right? So let's talk a little bit about that. You said you grew up in New Jersey and played a lot of video games as a kid. Uh,
Yeah,
what is it
yeah,
about video games? Just a little bit of insight around that.
yeah. So I think um, just for context, I'm not sure if you're like exactly the demographics of your audience, but if there's a large group of Indians that this may be relevant, then so my parents are from Kolkata, but they moved out of India in the, about they moved out of India. They were actually I was born in the Caribbean of all places. They didn't move to the US directly. So I was born in the Caribbean actually. But we moved to the US when I was 5 years old.
Mm.
And I had a very comfortable US middle class life. When I say I played a lot of video games, I mean, uh, basically my childhood entertainment was video games like Pokemon, or later on, as I got older, they were, other games like World of Warcraft, that came out when I was in high school. And I did have friends, and I talked to my friends, but a lot of my friends, mostly in, the elementary school, were other we talked about Pokemon all day, and so, or with Mario or whatever it was. We had,
Yeah.
conversations about video games, and I realized later growing up that other kids did other things like sports, and had other hobbies, and my hobby was video games. I think that's fine and normal for a kid, but I think at some point I feel like it was a missed opportunity to do more social activities and interactions as a kid. And it
Mhm.
might have had to do with the fact that I was also very overweight. And so when we came to the US, I wasn't overweight, but I
Ah,
think a lot of shared experience of people from other countries coming to the US, especially certainly the, Indians that have moved to the US, the diet is different and you pick up weight very quickly. And I was a
okay.
kid and I had grown overweight. And so it was almost kind of a mental stigma that like I didn't feel like I was good enough for sports or any kind of other
Oh,
social activity. And so games were like, games
off.
are, I'm a geek, I'm a nerd, I fit in to this crowd, and so I didn't really question it until I was in university.
Got it, got it. I think it's very interesting, right? Once you have that stigma of being overweight, or it's kind of difficult even more because you're worried about how you're going to get catcalled by people. So, yeah, it's kind
Yeah,
of I think a vicious loop of, video games, then overweight and not going out. So it just continues. But I'm
Yeah.
glad you look fit right now. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So you said you wanted to study mechanical engineering. So after high school, where did you go? What did you do?
Yeah, so I always knew I was inclined towards math and science as fields. I wasn't great at English at all or any of the humanities. The only humanities I was anywhere decent at was in history, and I still like history. But in high school, when I was thinking about what career I would want to do, I remember I was in my physics class when I saw this was 2004. The US had sent two rovers onto Mars, the Spirit and Opportunity rover, and we stopped the entire class and we just watched the videos of the rovers landing on Mars. And it was then that I said, like, that I want to do that. Whatever that is, I want to work for NASA and I want to build robots that go to Mars or anywhere else. And I ended up going to university where I studied mechanical engineering because they didn't have an aerospace department where I
Ah,
went, but they did have a mechanical engineering department, which was where most of the robotics was. And so I studied mechanical engineering. And actually throughout university, my plan was to work at NASA. My career, I wasn't to be an astronaut, but that would have been like a 5-year-old dream. But like my dream was to be an engineer at NASA to do robotics. And
mm,
I tried 3 years in a row to apply to get into NASA, and I was rejected every time.
ah,
And I ended up working at a robotics lab at my university. Just
okay.
every year was like I had a nice relationship with a professor, and they let me intern. So I still ended up pursuing robotics, but not at NASA.
Interesting. And how did you feel at the time while being in the university and working on the robotics lab and probably seeing some of your friends working in the NASA? Did you think of it as a missed opportunity, something that made you feel really low and sad?
Yeah, yeah. It was the third time that I got rejected. I kind of had a border life crisis. It's like, what am I doing with my life? This had to do with the fact that I was still my game plan was study math and science, and then after that, it's just, play video games. So I went to school in New York City, and I feel like for the fact that I'd spent like 2.5 years in university, just all my free time was spent playing video games. And I feel like after the third time, I kind of my career plan was like gone. I was like, I'm clearly not getting into NASA. Clearly not going to work at NASA. Like, what else am I going to do with my life? And that spiraled into a bit of a quarter life crisis where I was like, what am I doing with my life? And there was this just one summer that I decided that like something has to change. Like I need to figure out something that I need to do with my life. And that included like not just, like career wise, but my entire kind of profession. I feel like I had wasted 2.5 years of good university time that I could have spent socializing, that I could have spent doing something more productive. And so it was the summer of 2008 that I it entirely changed my entire life. And I think, you know, just had a high level that in the summer of 2008, I embarked on a number of different things that ended up defining the next 15 years of my life. And so one, I lost weight. I lost about 60 pounds or 35 kilos in about 4 months. I started learning Mandarin. I started learning programming, and I started volunteering at various events in New York City, recycling, volunteering. Actually, it was mostly recycling. And then the last thing was I had started learning music and playing the guitar.
Okay.
Um, and not all of those hobbies kind of have followed me throughout my life, but the first three I think have been like projects that I embarked in 2008 and have been with me since.
Very interesting, right? I think this is probably the moment or kind of an inflection point in people's life where some voice in your mind probably says, I've had enough, I need to change. I'm very
Yep.
curious, how did you lose 35 kilos or 60 pounds in a matter of 4 months? What did you do?
There's nothing. No secret, I just stopped eating. Uh, I instead of stopped eating, I reduced my calorie count.
Yeah,
I went down from whatever I was eating to being very strict about eating less than around like 800 calories a day, which was pretty severe. I wouldn't recommend it.
yeah.
But I would have a protein bar in the morning, and then it wasn't healthy, but I had one slice of pizza for dinner. Like, you know, but and that was it. And I think, it's like, weren't you hungry? And there was a sense in which, yes, I was obviously hungry. And I was hungry all day, and I was hungry all day, every day. But I think the what my a lot of people said, "What's your secret? What's your secret? You lost all this weight." And it wasn't that I just, at the time, what I wanted to explain and what no one could understand was like I changed my personality. And that, as a consequence, was being willing to just endure hunger for months on end. Um, and there was a point at which my weight stabilized, but I realized that like that wasn't like the end of it, because to keep the weight off, you had to continue being okay with just being hungry throughout the day. And I think that's, if you see people lose weight and then regain it, it's because your metabolism takes time to stabilize. And you really have to continue to kind of accept like physical pain and being hungry to keep weight off.
Very interesting. I think there's a person called Anna Lemke who talks a lot about metabolism and mostly neuroscience. And then there's an interesting. I think she's wrote a book which I read. I forgot the name of the book. What she exactly says is very similar to what you said. She said the pain and pleasure are like a balance, right? You have a lot of pain. At the end of the pain is your pleasure, and you have too much of pleasure. The result is going to be pain. That's how
Yeah.
your body tries to maintain homeostasis. Anyway, that's for a different class. I think one of the themes that came out of you, Sam, is in high school, you said you were overweight, not meeting friends, no social life, playing video games. And then you go to college and you do the same thing. You had glorious, university and friends, but you chose to play a lot of video games, overweight, did a little bit. But what is it with video games in your life that it seems to be a common thread?
Well, I mean, it basically stopped in 2008. I had actually a pretty negative reaction towards video games. And my brother, who was 3 years older than me, we used to play video games together all the time. And it was around 2008 that we just stopped having anything in common, because I would go home for Christmas and he would still be playing video games. I'm like, I'm not a kid anymore. I don't want to talk about video games. I don't want to play video games. It's almost like I went cold turkey. Not to say that video games are as addicting as, actual physical substances like alcohol or tobacco, but I kind of treated it as such. And I didn't want to have anything to do with it for the longest time. I don't know why it felt like I'd wasted my youth. Not my
Mm.
youth, but like my teens. I wasted my
Mm.
teens and I didn't want to waste my 20s.
I think that's a very good. Is this a very common theme in US where kids play a lot of video games, or is it unique to Indians or any demography?
No, I think it's just a certain group of kids just play video games. As I've gotten older, I've noticed that older people started playing more video games. So this was, you have to understand, like the timing was in 2010 before mobile phones were common.
Ah,
And then so as mobile phones, like this was after this kind of personality change that I saw people going on phones, and then you had a lot of adults starting to play like Candy Crush, and my mother started playing Mahjong, for example. And so I saw other people starting to play video games, and I'm like, I don't want any part of this. I've since kind of relaxed on that, since I kind of got over that kind of backlash or trauma
mm.
from feeling like I'd wasted my teens. But it's still, it was a moment where like it was part of just like I wanted to be a different person in 2008, and I think I kind of accomplished that. But it was just part of that kind of like I wanted kind of whatever I was doing before, I want to do the opposite now.
Well, it really shows. I mean, you're very articulate. You're running your own startup, doing something. So, talk to us a little bit about your PhD. What was it on, and how that went?
Yeah.
After.
So okay, so I wasn't able to get into NASA, but
NASA.
I was able to work at several robotics labs during the summers in between each year. And I guess, because I still studied hard and, worked hard, the professors liked me. One of my professors needed a graduate student to for a new lab he was setting up, and so he invited me to become his PhD student. And I hadn't really spent much time looking at careers, and that was my fault. Oh, I didn't mention this, but this is important to the story. I may have overcompensated in 2010. So my last year of university, um, I actually went overboard the other direction where I stopped. I didn't play any video games, but I probably did too much socializing, too much partying. Uh,
Yeah.
and then just okay, so like the first time I went on a date, for example, yeah, in 2009. So like I spent a lot more time just kind of like living my life and enjoying like this is my 21st birthday, and at some point I'm gonna have to get in the real world. And so I enjoyed that, but somewhat at the cost of that I did that at the cost of taking as seriously as I should have, like what job I was going to get. And so when my professor offered me a PhD kind of research position, I said sure, like that. I don't
Yeah.
have any better opportunities, and so I joined his lab. I think when I did join his lab, I think I looked at this from like a student's perspective. My whole life it was like I study, I did good, get good grades, I do what I'm asked to do, and that was fine. But it was in starting a PhD, I was still a grad student, so I still had to take classes, so that really didn't change. But I started having to think about like life as an adult. So
Mm.
I one of the hardest changes I had was just leaving university and then um, having my own apartment for the first time, and then paying rent and paying taxes and bills, and I was still kind of a student because I still had um, a university and classes, but adult life started basically because I actually had to pay bills and had to clean up my house and all these other things that I never had to before. And so when I saw what my professor was, sorry, when I saw what my classmates and my lab mates kind of like what they ended up doing after they graduated, a lot of them ended up working in a specific field called surgical robotics because that's what our lab did. And so they ended up working for the same two kind of medical robotics companies. And I got a tour of like one of the companies because but like I kind of like I question like is this what I want to be doing for the rest of my life?
Mm.
Like sure I like robotics, but like I wanted to do like space robotics, right? I didn't necessarily want to this is also maybe a rejection of my nothing against my parents, but they're in the medical field and
Hello. Looks like we have a glitch. Sam, are you there? Yeah, I think it's
can you hear
a
me?
yeah, yeah. Now it's a glitch from my end. I think I lost my internet connection for a bit.
Oh, no worries, no
Sorry about
worries.
that. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, so I was saying that
The parents and medical robotics.
yeah, so I did that. I realized that like I didn't want to go into medical robotics, and I was questioning whether I want to go into robotics in the first place. I think as I started learning computer science, when I told you I was starting to learn to code, I think the area of robotics that I started getting interested in was AI, and this was AI two hype cycles ago. So if this hype cycle is generated by AI, then the previous hype cycle was deep learning, and this was pre-deep learning. So this was an age where it was a lot of old school machine learning, like clustering, if anyone's familiar with that stuff, A-star search. But that stuff fascinated me, and I wanted to go do a bit more of that. And so I was teaching myself to program, and I had focused whatever little research I actually ended up doing on AI. And my PhD, sorry, my master's thesis was actually focused on how robots can navigate autonomously in the human body through haptic feedback. That's like touching around and feeling. So
Oh,
not with cameras, not with any other sense, just like touching around. Like this feels like the liver, this feels like the stomach, and I mean, it was old school machine learning, but that was what my research was focused on. I didn't realize that like maybe just like 3 years later, all of that would have been completely made irrelevant by neural networks. But I mean, that's what we were doing at the time. So I told my professor that I didn't want to do finish my PhD, and you have to understand like that's not like well looked upon by in the research field where like he was essentially paying research funds from his lab to
yeah,
pay my salary
right.
and but he also understood that like I had a I wasn't doing it to be mean or anything like that. It's just I kind of I started realizing that. So the kind of thing we aligned on was that like I would just do whatever research project that he wanted me to work on. As he gave me three options, and the one I went chose was the one that had was closest to computer science, which is what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm,
It
mm-hmm.
was funny because then I was at the same time thinking like, what do I want to do? Computer science seems to be a hot thing now in Silicon Valley, and so I applied to a couple of Silicon Valley startups. And I wanted to move to the Bay Area, and I applied. I applied for programmer jobs, but no one would hire me in 2012 because I knew AI, but no one cared about it.
Ah,
They wanted to know if I could build an app, right? If I
okay.
knew how to use Python, or if I knew how
Right.
to make a mobile, like Java to make an Android app, or like C to make an iOS app. Because that was what was hot at the time. This was like in
Mm,
2012, and the
right.
mobile rave was just going on. And so it's like I knew how to program AI systems in like academic languages like MATLAB or something like that. And like it was like we want people who know like real kind of programming, and for them real programming was apps. So maybe it sounds like ridiculous in like 2023 or 2024 or sorry, now 2025, that like you would get rejected because you knew about AI but you didn't know how to make an app, and now it's quite the opposite. But that's what it was at the time. At the same time, I kind of went back to my roots of like um, I didn't even mention this. There's too many things that kind of
Sure, sure. Go
come
ahead.
up here.
Just feel free. Yeah.
But yeah, so I think one thing that I kind of decided in that quarter life crisis was I also want to do something kind of positive for the world and have some kind of positive impact. And kind of the rationale for that was again, I go back to my parents are from Kolkata, and when I got to see my grandparents, we're talking about Kolkata in the 90s, which is a very different
Yeah.
Kolkata from 2025. But I remember when I was 5 years old, or I think 8 years old, and my parents would take me to the market, and when we were in Kolkata, and a lot of the rickshawallas still like had just
Yeah.
chappals, or like sometimes what some of them were barefoot. And I kind of was conscious that in the US like that, like I was much more fortunate to grow up in like a middle class home, and I wanted to give back in some way. And so I that was why I started volunteering, for example. And then when I was thinking about what to do with my life, when I realized I didn't want to do a robotics PhD, I applied to a volunteer program called the Peace Corps.
Okay.
It's a program in the US for young Americans where they'll send you abroad to a different country, and you do 2 years of social service work, paid for by the US government. And you work with a local institution or a local NGO or a local something. And they they sent me to Mexico, and my parents were surprisingly fine with it. And so I lived in rural Mexico in a rural town for like 2 years. And that was like another major turning point in my life. I'm sorry, like this is just like one long story.
Yeah, that's like,
I
the
don't
kind
know.
of the thread unwinds pretty interestingly. And so, one of the things I want to ask is, yes, you did a little bit of volunteering to compensate for something that you went through during this down phase of life of uncertainty and lack of a corporate job that you actually wanted to do, and probably you were way ahead of the time. It must have been pretty lonely. How did you feel as a person? Did you get a chance to talk to someone, express yourself the way you're doing right now? Did you have a friend?
No. I mean, I had friends, but I don't think anyone really understood that. And now that you mention it, those were some of the not happiest days of my life. There was a point in which I was very sad because the volunteering thing, when I gotten the volunteering job, it's okay, we're gonna do something. But there was a point before that when I was in the middle of the PhD program where I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I know I wasn't happy, and I know that just staying the course would have meant I would have continued to be unhappy. And I would say this was the summer of 2011, sorry, the winter of 2011, that this was kind of how my life was. And honestly, like I think uh I, I don't know how to best kind of describe this to anyone besides like painting a scene where I was a recent graduate and now working at a university, and then like in my little free time I would just randomly walk around campus listening to music. And like for example, like there's some songs like in Coldplay, for example. I'll give you like some exact specific songs like The Scientist by Coldplay. I would just listen to that walking around. Kind of like a very wistful song, like what am I doing with my life? I think the specific thing that really got to me was it was Christmas time, and I hadn't quite gotten back to my see my family for Christmas. But I had put up a tiny little Christmas tree in my tiny little apartment, and it was 11 o'clock at night, and I opened a beer. Well, I wasn't like a habitual drinker, but I started drinking in my last year of college with friends. And it was very different because I was drinking alone, and I never really want to go back to doing that. But I remember just drinking alone, beer by myself, looking at this tiny little side Christmas tree, listening to Coldplay's Christmas Lights song, which is also a very sad song about alcoholism. And reflecting like when I was a kid, Christmas was happy, and I'm not happy, and it just felt sad, and I didn't know what to do. And those were like among like I still remember like I have these very like flashes of memories, and that was probably one of the most poignant memories. Like it's just a feeling like I don't know what to do with my life. Uh, and I just like I sat there for like an hour and a half. I have I have a few of these moments throughout my life where I remember that very deeply. I mean like I muddled through. I think the other thing that I did was I remember I wanted to go to the Bay Area. I wanted to go to California, um, and I did my PhD work in Tennessee, which is in the US. You have to kind of like most people are aware of like the East Coast, like New York, and the West Coast,
Mm.
which is California. Tennessee is kind of in the middle. And then I would take my car and I would drive on the highway going west for about half an hour,
That's it.
wondering
What to do?
one of these days I'm not going to turn around. One of these days I'm going to not turn around. One of these days I'm just going to keep driving all the way to California and never come back. And I every time obviously I had to come back. So this was like Sunday at like 11 o'clock at night that I would drive, and like I have to be at the lab at 9 o'clock in the morning, so I have to come back. I have to turn
Yeah.
around and come back to Nashville. But I was dreaming of like one of these days, what if I could just like put everything behind me and just keep driving and
Just
going to
keep
where I want to
driving.
go? And
Search for the horizon.
those were like two like specific memories from that time that kind of encapsulate maybe like what I was feeling at the time.
Very interesting. I think I've seen this, Sam. One of the reasons I do podcasts like this is this part of human never comes out, right?
Yeah.
We hear the most famous people showing their vulnerability and the low moments and the high moments, but normal people like you and me, I thought this can be a good platform for us to just be ourselves and then talk about it. I think I think your story has been very fascinating. I think there's a lot of part two that I need to cover about your Mexico life and then back to. So
Okay.
quickly, I think you have a very interesting bio in your LinkedIn too. I will help you turn raw recordings into video podcast. So I'm going to just short, uh, shortcut, take a shortcut here, and then tell people that hey, he's going to turn your long form recordings into video podcast. So just give us a brief of how it is, and then we'll have a wrap.
Yeah, so right now I'm building a tool called Katana, which will automatically edit a Zoom recording into a video podcast. And so if you want to do a podcast, often they're like this, where you just get
Yeah.
someone interesting on a call and you oftentimes do it on Zoom. But if you watch a lot of professional podcasts online, um, what they'll do is they have a lot of like visual effects and transitions and things that often involve you needing to use very specialized software or a very specialized professional setup where you have multiple cameras or it's more than just getting on a Zoom recording. And what I ended up doing was um, building some AI analysis software in my app that will take a Zoom recording, split out the speakers. So you have one video file for each speaker, and then it'll also apply AI upscaling so that the video quality looks better as if it were kind of recorded with professional cameras.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then it will then do a lot of the visual automations that you'd normally see in a video podcast. So in this call right now, it's just two people. And if we were to watch this just as a regular video on YouTube, you'd see two black, kind of like the
Yeah.
black horizontal
Right.
bars on top. And what Katana does is it will add it will first like when I'm talking or when you're talking for a while, it'll just show like the active person. And then it will switch between that and then showing both you and me, but in a dynamic layout that you can add branding to and other things. It also add when in terms of like automatically editing a podcast, it will also add in an intro and visual things like it'll add name tags under each of our um you know under my box or your box. So it just makes it look like a professional podcast without a lot of effort.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I'll probably send this recording over to you to see how it works, right? And
Yeah,
I,
absolutely.
I think we should do that. I would like to have a part two with you, Sam. Maybe a couple of weeks down the
Yeah,
line, we'll find a slot after you relocate to Mexico. I think the second
yeah.
part, guys, I want to tell people that his second part of the life is even more interesting than what you've heard. I
Oh
think
yeah.
he went to Mexico as part of his. I think volunteering activity, he fell in love with his teacher who's a Spanish. I think now he has a kid, 5 and a half, 6 year old. We're going to talk about that and we're going to talk more about how Katana works, right? Of course, in the next session, and we'll probably have some our own video getting edited into shorts and maybe to show you how it actually works in reality. I think one last
Yeah,
question, Sam, before you let you go. You said you
yeah,
play video games with your son right now.
yeah.
Based on what you went through in your life, what is one thing that you would like to tell him?
Well, it's actually not really about video games. I think I've gotten over that trauma. I fortunately see that he's interested in other things. Now he actually goes outside in a way that I never really did. Um, but I do worry about the future, because I wonder, like, with the age of automations and AI, I wonder what career in school is going to look like for him. Because yeah, if I'm worried about my own future, I wonder how that's going to affect him. And social media is changing, and I don't know how Generation Alpha and all these things are going to turn
Yeah.
out. But I just worry about that things like climate change and AI automation are going to be issues for him in a way that my parents could have never imagined.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like my parents always had this idea like you would work at a company for the rest of your life and like the world's not going to end tomorrow, but it just feels like these days with the political climate and geopolitics in the world and AI automation and climate change, it feels like things are there's certainly risk, and I wonder what kind of world he's going to grow up in. I just
Yeah.
hope he's prepared for it.
One thing is for certain, I think there's a lot of uncertainty going forward. I think that kind of paints a good
Yeah,
metaphor for us to end our conversation. Sam, thanks a lot for coming. I'll fix up a time with you because I think the audience deserves to know how
yeah,
your remaining part of the life went in terms of marriage, kids, and then more into AI, your previous company and Katana. Thank you so much. You have a
yeah,
great day. I'll see you around soon.
yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely. Yeah,
Cheers, buddy.
all right, take care. Good.